everybody, and welcome to the Airport Wild Podcast. Today we're going to be sitting down with Jared and Marley of Margo Supplies, where we talk about everything from some proprietary pyros, including the launchers, all the way to even discussing a little bit about some bear-proof electric fencing for your campsite. So these guys carry a lot of really cool supplies. Make sure to give them a check out. And yeah, just relax, check out the episode, and hopefully you guys can learn to bring your wildlife management to a higher level. So, Jared, yeah, if you could just maybe introduce yourself. What do you do? Who do you work for? And let's get this show rolling.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Jared Marley. I work for Margo Supplies. I'm the business director here. I guess my job primarily is getting products, wildlife technology to all sorts of number of clients all over the world, among them airports, a big part of that. We supply pyrotechnics, propane cannons, visual scare products, really you name it, whips even, all sorts of stuff, really all the basic tools and some more of the complex ones to manage wildlife in an airport environment.
Nice. I like that terminology, wildlife technology. That's you don't hear that one very often. But yeah, so let's go right into it. So you mentioned kind of get the overview. One thing I did notice, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, was it caught me off guard. Was you guys actually sell bear fencing, like for backpackers?
Yeah, that's right. Bears and birds is basically what we do. We work a lot with large carnivores, mostly bears, cougars, though, wolves, and some of the smaller canids too. It's a big part of our company, always has been. I won't say we invented electric bear fencing, but we certainly popularized it across North America. So we did our first electric bear fence about 35 years ago in partnership with the Honey Cooperative. It's been a big part of our company and really interesting work. We do all sorts of cool stuff. Right now, we're going up close to the Yukon border in Canada, building a bear fence around a provincial park area that's been the scene of conflicts for years and years. There's been several human fatalities quite a while ago now, but it's always been a hot zone. So it's a little outside of airport business. People don't always know about it, but that's another side of our company. And actually, yeah, you mentioned technology. One of our new projects is we're building wildlife tracking devices, so wildlife tracking collars. We've got test units on elk in Jackson Hole. We've got some deer. We've got a couple units going out to Africa coming up anytime soon, and looking at getting some test units to wild boar in France. So
Very
we call
cool.
it wildlife technology. That's what it
for
is.
folks that don't know the collars, so are you running off of VHF or all GPS, or what kind of collars are you putting out?
Yeah, that's kind of a common misconception. There's two components. There's your inbound signal and your outbound transmission. So everything inbound to get your location is GPS. GPS is actually free. Anyone can access it. We call it GPS, but there's a couple other countries that have a system as well. When you talk about VHF, that's basically how you get it out. So we're using Iridium satellite connection. So we get the GPS signal in. We can do that up to one fix per hour. And then every 8 hours, we send that packet of data out to our server. And then the client can access that anywhere in the world. VHF standalones are still used a little bit. They're used just to track the individual animal. It's really just for locating an animal when you want to find it. Most VHF units now, though, will have a GPS receiver on it because it's not really a lot of weight at all to include that.
Right. Especially nowadays, units are getting smaller and smaller. That's actually one thing I didn't know you guys were doing. So that's pretty cool.
It's a new project for us, and we're really excited about it. But yeah.
Right. And so for folks at home, I mean, maybe they aren't familiar with this, as we're referring to the collars that you put on wildlife for tracking, and then you have the big, you got somebody out there with a Yagi, either a handheld or on a car mount, and actually doing the, listening for the telltale beeps and getting a location, and you can, well, you don't go right to it, you triangulate to get right on the animal. but that's still I think a lot of folks probably only ever seen that on like Discovery Channel or like Nat Geo or something. So that's pretty cool. Um, so
That's right.
so going back to, I guess we probably, this is more of an airport related podcast. Probably should run it
Yes.
more towards there. But so you guys are running pyros. So I mean, are most of the well, I guess we'll call them generics, like the bangers and screamers varieties, or
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people are going to be really familiar with 3 rounds in particular. Uh, Technical term is the 15 millimeter platform. They're the small cardboard shells. They're fired with a blank out of what looks to a lot of people like a starter pistol. The banger and screamer have been the historical rounds of choice, than the most commonly available. And then on the 12 gauge platform, people will be most familiar with the shell cracker product. Now, we got a few extra products on that. We still, of course, sell the bangers and screamers. I think, though, we're at 9 different pyrotechnic cartridges we currently carry. And in the last couple of years, we've been really focusing on visual effects as opposed to just those audible cartridges.
so you can delve more into what you mean by the visuals?
Yeah, so the bangers and screamers, of course, there's a little bit of smoke trail you'll see out of a banger. And if you fire a screamer kind of in low lighting, you'll see maybe some sparks trail behind of it. And I think a lot of your listeners will be familiar with that. So in addition to that, we've got our screamers with Silver Comet. So that'll produce a fairly audible spark trail behind the screamer. We have a few colored rounds. We really focus on green, any kind of green effect. And the reason is that one, anecdotally, has been extremely effective, and two, green really shows up in pretty much any lighting condition. Our newest round is the Comet Banger round. And so what the Comet Banger is, it travels about 90 feet and makes a big crackling effect when it detonates. The cool thing about it is you can actually stack it on top of one of our screamer rounds and fire it from a pistol. So we're focused on visual and multi-stage. The reason for visual too, just for some background, it's not really a surprise. Birds are primarily visual creatures. Historically, everyone's been all about that audible sound, but you know, birds flying around, it's really their eyesight they're relying on. With the visual effects, it's allowed us to get some really impressive results, especially with a wide variety of raptors. Tried a lot on eagles in Alaska and Washington State. Uh, Gulls, especially in really hard conditions like landfills, we're seeing great results with the Comet Banger combo. And turkey vultures, we're seeing good results out of that. So yeah, we're all steam ahead on visual effects. Not to say you don't include the audios, but yeah, add visual effects. Birds are visual based, and as many rounds as you can. For us, it's all about variety, trying to mix things up and prevent habituation.
That's very cool. So these new ones, these silver comets, are these a product that you guys are making yourselves, or are you importing them in, or?
Yeah, so we import in from Germany most of the 15 millimeter European, right, metric system.
Yep.
So those are all made in Germany. The 12 gauge are made actually right next door to you in Prescott Valley as well. And we're working very closely with them, and we're playing around with all sorts of new 12 gauge combinations as well. We have a 12 gauge screamer up and running, and a 12 gauge whistler, and we've got more coming. So stay tuned on that.
Very cool. So these 12 gauges, they're still based on the older cracker shells that run off of black powder, right? So they're more to be used in like a single shot versus like a repeatable shotgun.
Yeah, yeah. So the 12 gauge shell, it's a low velocity round. There is not enough power load in there to cycle semi-autos. So whatever shotgun you're using, manual cycle. We really recommend the best shotgun you can use is a single or double barrel break action.
Yep, that's something we've always used is like the old New Englands. They're harder to find nowadays, but yeah, like the older New Englands, they were cheap, they were very reliable, and yeah, just had that one. You don't have to worry about gumming up the works with black powder and.
Yeah, I mean it's technically not black powder, but it's pretty similar to it. It's kind of an interesting powder combination. You really got to hit that fine line between good back pressure, but it's got to hit kind of not too fast, not too slow. Pyrotechnics are sensitive, so you really got to nail in that powder choice.
Right. Um. Yeah. So I'm on actually on your website right now, also looking through some other on the same the same list they'll have your bangers and screamers. And I'm noticing you guys got some stuff that you don't often see on other websites that I've perused. Is you've got your range extenders, you've got your connector tubes, and you've got 380 or 9 millimeter caps, blanks. You know, everybody
Yeah.
I think 90% of the folks that are out there are probably gonna look when they think about these caps or think about the 22 cal or 6 millimeter acorns. Um, and then you guys have some interesting launchers in here. Like I'm looking at this Margo Thunderstick. Uh, I mean, honestly, it looks like something you see a kid putting in their mouth at the mall or something. Like one of them, what do they call them, a vape stick or something. But
That's
that's your actual launcher.
well, maybe it's showing my age because I'm getting to the age where vaping is a younger generation now. Maybe you too. I'm not sure, but
No,
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
hear what you're
I
saying.
just hit 30, but I'm just talking about when I see the kids. All the kid, yeah, that came out way after I was already growing up.
Yeah, it's one of the privileges of being older is I never had to deal with that as well. Both of us are the same age. Yeah, going back to that. So you named a whole pile of different products. So go back to the pyro. Yeah, the Comet Bangers, the Thunder Sticks, or sorry, the Comet Bangers and the Range Extenders. Those are our exclusive products. We're the only ones who carry them at all. We've gone and worked really closely with the manufacturer, getting it dialed into our specifications. Kind of went back to the Comet Banger. What's different about our screamers is they work as a booster. So all of our screamers, you can put another pyro on top of that for a multi-stage effect. Now, when you're firing them out of the pistol to get good flight, all you can do is a screamer and then a Comet Banger. So you get the normal range of screamer about 250 feet, then another 90 feet from the Comet Banger, and then that crackling starburst effect with the visual green starburst coming down. Next product is the range extender rocket. So the rocket, it's similar to a bottle rocket. You can fire it out of some of the handheld launchers, or you can fire it like a bottle rocket with a fuse. They come with both. And it's just a rocket. The rocket itself travels about 750 feet, but you can stack any of the 15 millimeter pyros on it. And you can do up to three 15 millimeter pyros on top in sequence. So really, you can take any of the combinations we have, stack them on top. I shouldn't say any. There's some safety manuals we have in training for what combinations work and what's safe and what's really effective. But the max range you'll get with a rocket with 3 stages on it afterwards is about 1,250 feet.
Which that's a long ways. I mean, for most folks, I mean, you're used to bangers and screamers. You know, a long shot's 200 feet. So,
Yeah,
I mean, you're
definitely.
talking
Well,
6 times the distance.
the reason for this is I'm sure you're probably familiar with this. You've probably seen them as the Kappa cartridges.
Yep.
Great product, excellent. As I'm sure to the bemoaning of your audience, very difficult stock situation pretty much for the last many years. It's a specialty round. It's great, but it was expensive and really just when it was in stock, it was in stock. When it wasn't, it wasn't. So we needed something else. Not to say we won't ever carry the Kappa, but that was our answer was the Thunderstick. So I was really trying to focus on getting range. A couple areas we really find it useful for is, of course, again, to yourself and many people all across the South is buzzards or turkey vultures, the real name for them, flying on thermals. A banger, even a shell cracker, it's rough going trying to get range to them. Waterfall resting on water that are beyond the normal range. And really, when you get those kind of birds who know the drill, they recognize the truck, they know they're going to get some pyros fired at them, and they'll kind of lazily move on just a little bit beyond range.
Yep.
That's when you throw in a range extender with the whole barrage effect and keep them moving.
Yeah, and
So
that's
yeah,
definitely. Cause I mean, as soon as you said that, the first two gills that hit my head was raptors and corvids. I mean, those things they just don't care. So having something that can kind of bring them back into range is definitely definitely a very cool item.
yeah, I mean, I've always had a soft spot for corvids. Honestly, they're so smart, and I like that. I take a corvid over a European starling any day of the week. That's for sure. But that's my
Yeah.
preference.
No, and I'm right there with you. 'Cause I mean, well, I mean, especially on the high winds. Like I grew up in New York State, you get some high winds coming off of the Lake Ontario, and There was nothing better on a windy day when going out and watching the crows, dipping and diving in the wind and doing their little acrobatics, and they're just so smart and but that's also their downfall at the same time.
Oh yeah, but they're trainable. At least that's in a lot of instances. You on them, you keep an eye on the scout birds. You really kind of hit that aggression and combine some audible effects, and you see good results. But anyway, that's kind of the pyro stuff. A lot of new things happening there. Yeah, launchers. You just want to quickly touch on that. Yeah, we have a ton of different launchers. The reason is that no single tool is really going to solve every kind of situation, even in an airport environment that you're going to come across. So a lot of people are familiar with the we call them 6mm. Again, try and differentiate that European 15mm scare cartridge goes with that to the shell cracker. Just our way of doing it. The 6mm launcher, you're probably familiar with it, the RG46.
Yep.
That was the industrial launcher of choice. Unfortunately, surprisingly, blank guns are not primarily manufactured to be used at airports to control wildlife. It might come amazing, but it's a very niche market. And so, due to some changing safety regulations, there was an additional barrel blocker added to the RG46, which has reduced the range of the pyrotechnic to make it not suitable at all for wildlife control uses. So we need to find another alternative. Our answer to that was the Thunderstick. So this is something we designed. We make it. It's a relatively new product for us. It's been out for about a year. We're constantly fine-tuning it. Couple ideas behind it is, as you said, it doesn't look like a pyro launcher. That can be useful, especially in ground side kind of stuff. Yeah, I've heard all sorts of horror stories about people walking around ground side and getting local law enforcement called on them. Hands hands over your head kind of thing. And so it's really good for the non-gun. It's a softer public image. If you're working around a terminal or where people can see you, they don't get a pyro launcher's a pistol. They just see some guy in an orange vest waving around a little black pistol looking thing. So again, softer public image. One of the big things about it that we really like is pyro, especially in the West fire season. It's so important to fire the pyrotechnics at an elevated angle, and it's really easy to forget that.
Yeah.
Handguns and handgun-looking devices, they're meant to fire forward primarily. You're not firing a handgun in the air. So your natural hand position is aiming straight ahead and firing. The Thunderstick, you grip it like a tube. So your hand position already is naturally at about that 45-degree firing angle. We've actually got a gravity trigger on it too, so it will not fire if you're pointing it accidentally to the ground.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, beyond that, it's just really easy to clean. The pyrotechnic combustion area is totally separate from the internal workings. So there's 3 parts. You just pop them all off, run a brush through, keep them clean pretty easy. So that's the Thunderstick. It's our answer. Of course, we're always working on new devices, and again, there's always every situation there's always an ideal tool. We also have those large caliber launchers you mentioned. The RG59 is kind of the primary airport one. It's a revolver. For those who haven't seen it before, it uses a 380 blank. Couple situations where that's useful for is the 380 blank is it's loud. I mean, it's a 38 cal bullet basically for gunpowder load. Obviously, it's a inert blank. Right. So if you're again working in a terminal area where you just can't use pyro, you're going to get some audible effect with that blank right there. The other really nice thing about it is you can put a 5-shot adapter on top of that launcher. So there's enough power in that blank to launch 5 pyro all at once. And
I was actually right as you were bringing it up. I actually have it. I'm looking at this adapter, this 5-shot adapter, and it looks like when I was a kid, it looked like a Nerf gun almost.
Yeah, that's right.
But 5 pyros at once, that'll get the job done.
Aggressive hazing, those are situations where, and you'll see this a lot where people use 1 pyro at a time, especially going back to, they'll use just kind of the basic banger and screamer. The birds have seen it before.
Yep.
They see a bird, you've seen it, you got some birds loafing around, and screamer. Okay, we'll move about 50 feet away. get in your truck or walk another 50 feet, fire another one. They're going to
Yep.
move 50 feet away. What we really want to do is we want to get that adrenaline spiking like mad. When they see you, it's business time. And so aggressive hazing with quite a fast initial burst of pyro. One, you're going to get it moving a lot faster. And two, mostly you actually use less pyro. Uh, again, you can fire 10 shots kind of one at a time, keep moving the bird around, or, go all guns a-blazing, get 5 off right away, fall with a range extender rocket, and they're gone.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely a very cool adapter. Very, I could definitely see a lot of uses. Like I'm thinking like mass amounts of gulls.
Yeah.
Uh, because they'll, especially when they get going, they all get flying and calling. You got that big cacophony of sound, and sometimes a single hazer or a single banger, a single screamer can get lost. But yeah, I can just imagine 5 pyros mixing and matched all together. That's gonna wake them up.
Yeah, we one time, just to give you an idea of this, I always look at landfills, not necessarily, the exact same operations as an airport, but it's one of the toughest environments, especially on gulls. A
That
friend of
was
mine,
actually the situation I was just thinking about is gulls on a landfill.
yeah, I mean, a friend of mine told me, he said, you can run the math on an active face, your general gull species, generic gull, a whole pile of different ones, so it varies a bit. About 3 minutes, they can get their daily calorie needs.
Yeah.
So that's how do you fight that, right? They don't have to work all day. 3 minutes on that active face, they're done. So you'll never get the kind of aggression you get on a gull. So we, at a West Coast landfill in the wintertime, which is actually when they face a lot of gull pressure because they're lazy, really, bad weather day, they don't want to be on the mudflats fishing, go to the landfill and get their fill there. We went to a landfill with no bird control at all. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Under 100 pyrotechnics, we kept the active face clear of birds for the entire day.
For under 100 pyros.
Yep, yeah, and it was just about when we saw a gull, no tolerance. They did not get one bit of food reward. So on them, heavy on them. We used 3 tools to do that. We used pyrotechnics, we used a radio-controlled scare cannon, and we used one of my all-time favorite wildlife deterrents, also the oldest wildlife deterrent in the world, a whip.
So I had one more I wanted to talk to you before we got into other stuff, but I really want to hear this more about the whip. Like,
Yeah. So the magic with any of our bird control products, and I'll go maybe this a little later, but I really class deterrence in 2 things. It's active or passive deterrence.
yep,
Active, pyrotechnics, whips, a remotely activated scare cannon. It's really something you're deploying when you see a bird. Those are always going to be, of course, the most effective.
yep,
Passive deterrents, they're more environmental. You're trying to make this landscape, another friend of mine calls it a landscape of fear. Shout out to Pacific Northwest Raptors there. And again, your use of active deterrent adds to that landscape, but it's about, visual deterrence sitting around, some cannons around. Again, passive deterrence, they're overall making it an unpleasant area. Active deterrence are what they're your workhorses. So what we've always found is magic is a combination of audible and visual effects. Whips do both. You got that nice, huge swinging motion of whips, and man, birds react to it. And what's cool about a whip crack is when you get pretty good at it, it takes a little bit of practice. You can project that sound where you want it to go. So kind of like a pyro, you can place a whip crack and project it where you're finding birds, and you can use it to move them off in the direction you want them to go. That combined with the swinging of the whip, they hate it. There's no mystery. We've been using whips for essentially for past recorded human history to control wildlife.
oh yeah. I mean, whether wild or domestic, yeah. I know. Like whenever I think of whips, I'm always thinking like I was a big fan of westerns, so I always go back to like Australian cattle station kind of stuff. But
Yep,
like Man and Snowy, was it the Man from Snowy River? Is what
that's
I'm
right.
thinking of. Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
no, that's
And,
pretty cool. That's not a tool that comes up very often.
well, I think it should because one of the big things right now, in my opinion, now is not the time for super fancy automated systems. That's great if that's the direction your field wants to go, and if you've got the budget for it and you can make the case for it, that's great. But times are not amazing, obviously, for the airline industry in general.
Right.
Nothing we've ever seen in 40 years of business, actually, this year is our 40th year in business. Nothing we've ever seen replace boots on the ground. And right now, our objective is to make sure there's budget for those boots to stay on the ground. Again, you can try and make sure, manage your deterrent budget, try and keep that pricing right. But even from a business perspective, if you lose the human knowledge on how to manage your airfield because you can't keep them on staff, what's going to happen in 2 years from now?
Right.
So that all that knowledge is lost. All those people, you got to rehire them, replace them, retrain them. It's not a good situation. So we're really focusing on simple, affordable tools that help the people who work in there every day get their job done easier. And that's why we like whips too, because it's really cheap. One whip, a nice, good quality whip, runs you about $100. It's not consumable. You're not going through pyros. There's a cracker you got to replace every once in a while, and they're about 50 cents for the cracker part of it. That's it. It's a simple, easy tool, and again, just one more tool in the toolbox. That's the way we look at things.
Right, but especially you start getting that stuff around there. Folks are going to want to use it. They're going to find an excuse to go use it, kind of thing. So you might actually see an upscale. Sorry, on your control efforts. Just folks just want to go. Hey, let's go fling the whip around for a little while.
A lot of people have been. It's a great tool. You might not be entirely surprised by this. The female wildlife professionals tend to take to it pretty well. I'm not so 100% sure if they're using it always for wildlife or also kind of as a human resources motivational tool for their staff. But man, I got to shout out to the ladies out there. They're especially been really jumping on the whips. And again, it's a great, simple, easy, cheap tool. Takes a little practice, but to get to know it and get to use it. But yeah, excellent tool. Really should not be overlooked.
No, definitely not. And like I said, that's not a tool that comes up very often. I think actually, this is actually the first conversation where it's ever come up as a wildlife tool. I think in my professional career, anyways. So we were talking about times aren't that great, but I think we should still talk about some of the more technological stuff. So you mentioned a couple times about your radio cannons. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I think most people are going to be familiar with the basic propane cannon. Yeah. Essentially, it is what it is. Called an air cannon sometimes. There's all sorts of different combinations and setups you can use. The basic thing it does is it uses propane ignited to make a loud echoing boom. Decibels about 130 to 150 decibels, pretty comparable to a shotgun blast right at the muzzle. It's pretty deep, so it does echo real nice. That's, again, kind of like pyro. That's your basic effect. Within that, of course, you've got older generations of cannons, simple mechanical ones. They don't use power at all. These are often used in an agricultural setting. There's also electronic cannons that'll run just on a timer. So you program it when you want it to fire, what time periods you want it to fire between. These can work really good for regional airports. So you maybe only have scheduled flights, X amount of time per day, and your wildlife management staff consists of an airport manager or maybe the fireman on duty. It's someone who's wearing quite a few hats. So that can work really well. But what I think we're seeing a lot of, and I agree with this quite a bit, is that in an airport environment, really you want to make sure you have that human interface between the deterrent, between activating that deterrent. The scenario you don't want to have happen, of course, is an automatic deterrent going off when it shouldn't. So you got birds maybe loafing, not an amazing spot. You're really not thrilled they're there, but they're a heck of a lot better on the ground than in the air at the wrong time. So again, radio remote activated cannons is probably a catch-all term. There's a few technology groups within that. Again, having that human interface, not only is it safer, you're also going to have a lot more effectiveness with it. And when you keep exposing animals to the same sound all the time, there's no mystery here. They figure it out pretty quick. This
Yep.
is not actually lethal. That's what we're trying to do basically, is convince birds that being in here is a scary bad place. And if you stay, you're going to die. If you keep just banging away, they start
Right.
to
You're gonna.
realize that consequence to anything. So yeah, remote activation reduces, increases safety and reduces habituation.
Yeah. So that's definitely that acclimation is definitely what you don't want. And that's something we've been trying to tell our listeners is you don't want, like we were talking about with the pyros. One thing we didn't bring up, like you, well, kind of with your 5-shot adapter, is like you don't want to launch just like a screamer, screamer, screamer. Mix in some bangers, mix in some silver comets, mix in some extenders. And the same
Definitely.
kind of thing here is, if you're constantly you got this thing going off every 15 minutes, every half hour, every hour, whatever your timer is set to, you're gonna get acclimated. Versus if you can just control it when they're there, like that's gonna help you a lot. And then also, um, like you mentioned, those inopportune times, like you don't want your cannon going off with an aircraft coming in, because
No.
you just made that situation 100 times worse than it had to be. Um, I mean, a bird on the ground is, it's a bad thing, but it's not the worst thing compared to birds in the air. At least when he's on the ground, he's predictable. He's not going anywhere until his wings open. So it's just one more thing you got to kind of keep in your head when you're doing this. So going with the radio ones. So are these the cannons themselves hardwired? Are they like a hardwired power source?
Yeah, that's right. So, again, cannons, basically any kind of setup, we've done it. They come in a few different forms, but we actually, I got one going out today that's going to be mounted on a truck, which is a pretty good use of them, in my opinion. So they'll have a push button activator wired into the truck. The cannon's wired right into that cigarette lighter, and it's just part of the bash truck. For hardwire in, our cannons, and we've actually put a lot of effort into it, we've substantially reduced the power consumption. So a simple 14 amp per hour battery with a 6-watt solar panel is all the power you'll need in 95% of locations. Okay, you're talking about Alaska, maybe in the middle of winter, might need a
Right.
little bit of a top up. Sure, switch that battery out every 2 weeks in the height of in the worst of the season. But that's it basically. We mostly rely on solar power with the battery to provide power for the cannons. Uh, of course, a radio control cannon, which you brought up, needs power to run. It needs to be on looking for that radio signal. So we don't ever really hardwire them into AC. It could be done. There's nothing to prevent it from being done. It's pretty easy. We've done it on the very rare occasion, mostly in agriculture. We have this one client. He's got a totally automated fish pond network. He's got like
Huh.
6 ponds, and he just sits on his computer all day. And he controls AC power through remotely activated power bars. And so the feeders, cleaning, bird control, it's all done from his desktop in a bedroom 200 miles away.
No,
But
that's cool. 'Cause I was kind of thinking in the fish pond setup, you got, I mean, you're going to have a lot more of your hardware going in. You got your aerators, you got your feeders, you got all those other power sources versus, a more agricultural area. Airports might have the ability, you got all your lights and your, uh, I can't think of, instrument landings, ILS. Yeah, you got all your,
ILS. I always say ILS, but that's something else, I think. No,
yeah,
ILS.
ILS, instrument landing system for the aircraft. Um, And then two, for these radios, what kind of range do the radios themselves have?
Yeah, the big factor, and this is an easy area for confusion, the big factor on radio controls of technology is line of sight. It's not so much about range. We've tested range up to 3 miles away. Uh, that was on ice on a, minus, well, I got to think in Fahrenheit for you folks, minus 20-degree days. So super cold, clear, on a big long lake, no interruptions at all. We got 3 miles of range out of it. The big determinant is line of sight. Radio does not bounce around objects super well. So essentially with ours, we run on a 900 megahertz frequency. If you can see it, you should be able to fire it. Now, airports are noisy environments. There's a lot of radio frequencies bouncing around. There's lots of metal which acts as giant interfering antennas. So it's something to be aware of. One of the things I'll get back to in a second. One of the things I did want to mention about cannons, because you mentioned about being limited by hardwire, is one area I've been mentioning to folks a lot more recently is, again, it's important to, when you're doing wildlife management, you're there to reduce the risk. You're not there to introduce new risks to aircraft.
Right.
Runway incursions, you got to get to a certain area, possibly fast. The only way to go through it is maybe through an active runway. Of course, you got to wait for tower and all that kind of stuff. If you can avoid it, I think everyone agrees it's better not to drive your vehicle across the runway.
Right.
So where I think cannons should be used more is these little trouble spots and hot zones you'll see around an airfield that are just not easy to get to. So you have that cannon sitting there stationary, ready to go. You're not necessarily relying on it as your main bird control system. You still got people wandering around. When you see that area, you just can't get to it. Perfect time for a remote control cannon. But again, so range. So the final thing, a little plug for us, is we've got our new system in testing. By the way, listeners, we have a few more models out we would like to get for free. Drop us a line. We have an app control cannon. So we have an Android app. We've just finished our shop testing on it. On your cell phone, you can control our cannons anywhere in the world. So you just have to, the cannon needs connection to the cellular network, and you need to have connection to the cellular network, and that's it. Basically, you get on your app, you'll have a map with the airfield on it. The cannons are all fitted. Speaking of which, our background a little bit with GPS we're playing around with. We've got GPS receivers on the cannon. So that app will know where that cannon is precisely. You don't even have to program it or move it around. Wherever you set the cannon, the app's going to know exactly where it is. And you'll have a map, you'll have the cannon on it, you'll have an active status on the cannon, you'll have battery life, you'll have any error reports. It knows if it's tried to fire and there wasn't a detonation, it'll send you an alert. You'll have approximate time life expectancy left in the propane tank. So we're getting a little fancier with that, but still, we're not quite there to offer commercially yet. Like I said, we're looking for testers, so drop us a line. The pricing is going to be more or less in line with the radio cannon.
No, that's a pretty cool advancement right there.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Because I'm thinking like this sounds like it'd be a good fit for smaller GA style airports. Maybe one runway or maybe two shorties or but something like this. If you have a limited staff, if somebody's in maybe an operations center overlooking the airfield, they can look down and say, hey, there's birds down at, we'll call the Alpha 1 intersection with the runway. They can look around. Nope, aircraft aren't coming. We gotta get those birds out of there. They reach over, hit the button, and that should be in range. It sounds like because they're gonna be well within 3 miles of.
Yeah.
So to me, that feels like it's going to be a really cool fit for. Larger airports could get some really cool information or use out of it as well. But I could really see some of these, the smaller airports getting a really good use out of this product.
Yeah, I would say for the radio cannons, they're very, like you say, they are really popular with either regional or even non-commercial airports or at least non-scheduled flight airports. Yeah, they're super popular. But just to be clear, the 3-mile max range, again, that's max. It varies a little bit. Well, can vary a lot, especially if you got a building in the way of the cannon.
Right.
That's for radio control. Our new app control cannon, as long as the cannon is in cellular reception anywhere in the world, and as long as you have cellular reception anywhere in the world, that's it. It works through the internet. So it works through GSM data. So there is no range requirements at all for the new app control cannon.
That's pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm glad you made that break off there because yeah, that is the 3 miles. It was only for radio control.
And again, up to 3 miles. But
up to 3 miles, yeah, with ideal conditions. Oh yeah. Anybody's played with walkie-talkies and see what the rating is. It's usually a lot shorter than that. So
yeah, but again, same thing. It's about line of sight. It's not just about distance. That's really important. The other thing you'll see with radio control is that sometimes a high humidity day is real bad. On the other hand, you got a day with like low cloud cover. The signal actually bounces up and down on those clouds, and you can get phenomenal range. But one final thing I should add too: the other area where you're going to see a lot of remote detonation need is at military installations. They tend to have a little different need. What you see a lot with them is with typically a little less movements than a general aviation environment.
Yeah.
They'll use cannons to clear a whole runway zone before they have something happening. So they'll have a whole series of cannons, and that's what ours is designed for too. The only final plug I have on cannons is we have one more new product, and anyone who subscribes to our newsletter, which you can do just on our website, will see one going around shortly. It's the Margo Trident. I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of the name. That was my contribution to the project, and probably my only real meaningful one. But I'll certainly take the credit. And so this is kind of your large scale, typically military, but large airports as well. It's a unit mounted on a pallet, and it's actually got 3 cannons on it. In this one, you would almost always use a app control. They could be fitted with radio, but it's really designed for use on the app. And this 360-degree coverage, huge impact with all 3 cannons detonating at once. And that paired with our new app, I think is going to be a real deadly combination.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be. Um, so one last thing I had before we move on from cannons is you mentioned that the app is Android. Is there any plans coming out for an iOS?
Yeah, you know what? I notice a few more people than I anticipated are still on iOS. It's something we're considering. The Android environment is a lot more friendly for what we were trying to do with it, and was a natural first step as a development. We'll keep our eye on it, and we'll certainly be looking at it in the future. Right now, our main goal is just dialing down exactly how people want to use the app, really making it easy as possible for to use. And once that's nice and stable, we'll move on. Now, keep in mind, if you buy a new Margo Trident from me, the phone's free. Don't worry about it.
That's cool.
Or a tablet,
Um,
probably. I'm not that generous, but
right, right. Um, so yeah, so let's move on from the cannons. I want to stay on more of the active front for now. We'll kind of
yeah,
just kind of going through your listing, what you guys have to offer. But I want to stay active, and let's talk about. I see you have a laser that's available.
yeah, that's right. So lasers are something I think a lot of people have seen a lot of noise about in recent years. It's a, it's an interesting one, and the reason is, if you look around at general laser regulations, the number one thing you'll see on all transportation boards is not for use near aircraft at all.
Yeah.
You know, again, going back to our activities in bird control is meant to make aviation safer. It's not to introduce new hazards. So with lasers, we've seen fairly good results. Certainly among some species are particularly sensitive to it. Canada geese really tend to respond fairly negatively to lasers. It's nice. It's a silent tool. Um, our focus on a couple of lasers is really, especially in aviation environment, one more tool in your toolbox. That's it. This is not something that's going to replace pyrotechnics. It's not going to be something to replace your field crew. It is one extra tool.
Yeah.
We're insistent on keeping the power low on lasers. The reason is that you'll see marketing, perhaps some people may have come across it, for so-called aviation lasers. They're typically super high powered, or bird scare lasers. They're typically super powerful,
Yep.
100 milliwatt to 500 milliwatts often. Hopefully, the people selling them will tell you the milliwatt rating. It's really important. The stats vary a little bit, quite a bit, depending on the beam divergence, a whole pile of technical terms. But the important thing to remember is lasers 100 milliwatts or higher can cause flash blindness up to a mile away. That's pretty scary.
Yeah,
When you've got
that's a lot
pilots.
farther than you need.
Well, one, it's way farther than you need, and two, you know, again, even if you're not aiming the laser anywhere near a plane, there's reflective signs, metal, water. There's so many chances for refraction and reflection. they can put that laser any direction. And again, when you're using something really powerful, you could be interfering with pilots really easily. So we focus on 5 milliwatt lasers. These are basically the max range that's considered safe for consumer uses. Even though we're industrial, we stick with that. Again, trying to avoid hazards. About 20 feet away or so, there's no risk of flash blindness. I'll have to get back to you on the numbers on that. We use a wide beam divergence. We want to have a wide beam. Now that means though, it's not going to be a tool to be used in broad daylight. There's just simply not enough power to have a massive effect. You know, noon, your bright sunny Arizona, noon, it's not going to be the tool for that. The other thing to keep in mind with lasers is there's nothing particularly special about bird control lasers. They're green, again, anecdotally, and now there's some more academic evidence. We really are focusing, everyone's zeroing in on that green color for wildlife control tools. Just tends to work. It's a green laser. What you want to look for in a bird control laser, again, from my perspective, is relatively low power. They're not expensive tools. You go to a dollar store and a laser costs $5 or less. And then how do we get to a bird control laser for several $1,000s?
Right.
I'll let your viewers do the math on that. There's a few listeners, I guess. Radio, which is good. I've got a voice for radio and a face for it too. Pardon me there. So yeah, what you want to look for is a wide beam divergence, the color green. That's really it. So our lasers, they run about $80. Again, just a really simple, easy tool. One more option for you.
No, that sounds really awesome. So if you don't mind, let's take a break right now. And we'll come back in a couple of minutes and we'll keep on going with this.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. I'm going to grab myself a glass of water.
So, all right. Everybody's got to drink. I probably should put it out there. I am drinking iced tea. This isn't alcoholic adult beverage. That comes later.
This is vodka. So there you go.
There you go. Hey, at least somebody's doing it.
Joking.
So we the whole first we'll call it the first half of this. We've talked about the more assertive side, the active side of wildlife mitigation that you guys do. So I wanted to go more passive now. We're kind of on the downhill side. I'm looking at your website still, and under the tab of visual scare products, you guys got some really cool items. The first one on the list, and the one that makes me kind of chuckle the most because it's something unique, is the dead magpie. And I know you guys have some others, but yeah, let's dive into the passive side a little bit.
Yeah. I'll maybe preface that as well. I kind of touched on this again. What we're really trying to do is a systems-based, scalable approach to kind of throw out the buzzwords there. And so what that means is taking bits and pieces of active deterrence. Again, they're your big movers, backing it up with passives. The passives do a couple things. One, they're a lot cheaper than a truck moving around with someone in it. And so again, trying to create some effect and some kind of base level deterrence, so you can add on to that as needed. With the passives, like you said, visual. So visual decoys is really two visual decoys for our purposes, which are predator effigies of one kind or another, or dead effigies of one kind or another. Of course, the dead effigies, they're really for social birds. Some, again, European starlings, they're probably not going to care. So we don't carry a European starling dead effigy. But we've got a seagull, a crow, a magpie, and a pigeon as well. Pigeons are, of course, an extremely hard animal to get to do anything you want it to. But yeah, again, you're trying to do everything you can to create the illusion, if you will, of lethal consequences, even if you're not using non-lethal tools. You really want to get the birds thinking there's consequences to this guy firing pyro at me or cracking the whip, or, when that truck shows up, this is a bad thing. We want to go. Yep. So again, with the dead effigies, you can have them hung up strategically, leave them around a little bit. you're going to get in a lot less trouble than the real thing, that's for sure. If anyone sees it, so that's one benefit. Um, and the other thing people actually do, and it works pretty good, is it's more in a landfill environment where you're really mobbed by the animal. You can have someone throwing out those dead effigies while you're firing pyro, and
Yep.
they're not necessarily going to know that's a dead effigy. They just see that doesn't look good. It's one more reason not to be there. Same thing with the predators. Really, again, trying to create kind of a scary, bad environment they don't want to be in. With the predator effigies, of course, looks like there might be a predator hunting. With predators, you got to move around the decoys pretty often. And that's true for paint cannons as well. Any kind of passive deterrent, you can't just leave it lying there. You still got to be someone involved in it. Keep in mind, an airfield environment, uh, predator effigies can work really well when you're very certain of the airport ecology. Of course, you know, a peregrine falcon, maybe a male's cruising around and think that's a pretty lady, in fact. So you do want to be a little careful with the predator effigies in the airport environment. Know what species are at risk, what are your species of concern, and making sure you're not creating a nice environment by changing the ecology. Just kind of like, your grass management techniques, right? What
Yep.
works and reduces one hazard can increase another hazard. Uh, Again, we're just trying to have the maximum amount of effects we can. One thing I think I've experienced with birds in general, kind of a catch-all term for birds, my magic number is 3, and it's not like the quantity of deterrence, it's the amount of different deterrents. So I really like to see a passive visual deterrent in effect when I'm trying to create kind of a system, a passive audio effect, and of course your active deterrence. And what makes up each of those 3 components can be one thing, it can be several things, but it's really nice to have all 3 of those working together.
Yeah, and that's a very good way to think about it. Is, you have those 3 working in conjunction. I mean, that's really gonna upgrade your wildlife management. Because I mean, you guys also just keep looking at your items here. And you guys have some of the more generic stuff, like you got your flash tape, which I think that's a pretty common tool. You got your kites. You even got daddy long legs on here for putting on like perching structures and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, they're gonna say something. Yeah, so you got the daddy long legs, and you got what I'm actually a fan of, the scare eye balloons. I think in short term use, 'cause again, it's one of those things that they get acclimated to very quickly. But it's something that as long as it pops up and it's gone, it can have some effect. I like that. I like that a lot better than I like the plastic owls.
Yeah.
Personally.
And again, the whole thing with a lot of these ones, especially the generic, kind of more, commonly seen visual deterrents in particular, they're very affordable. You get really good bang for your buck. Would I rely on flash tape, for example, to keep birds away? No. But do I got a strategic area where I've got a little nice roost for one species or the other? I'd rather them not be there, clearly. Can some flash tape, when combined with other deterrents, just be that little extra push that keeps them away? Now again, airport environments are a little different. I think it kind of goes back to, as well, you do see a lot of people using kind of sirens and trying to chase birds out that way. Airport environments are not, a nice little blueberry field in the countryside. They're noisy. They've got sirens and flashing lights going on all around them. So keep that in mind for what it's worth. Flash tapes, and that's, I think, why you probably see a little better effect with a scare eye balloon in an airfield environment, because it's different than what's in that environment normally.
Yep.
You got to remember that this is, if a bird's there, really think they're pretty close to jet engines. How much is in baggage trucks with flashing lights going on? How much is that really going to affect them? You need everything, again, working in concert, but you need to introduce foreign, scary things to that environment.
All for sure. Because I mean, even the stuff that it's not even that common. I mean, it's common, but it's not as predictable as like you hear like I've watched pigeons around terminals with the jet bridges go back and forth, and as soon as you move the jet bridge, you got that very loud, obnoxious alarm comes up. They don't budge. They don't. They're used. It's not how immediate the sound is. They're just used to the sound. They know it's coming sooner or later. So having something that stands out from that, like have like that scare eye or,
Yeah,
but that's in that regard, I think lethal reinforcement comes in heavily in that, especially around a terminal. You do a lot of trapping and whatnot. Um,
sure.
but so I'm trying to think. I think we've just.
One, yeah, maybe one really quick tool that again used strategically. I really like, which is distress cry generators. So these are basically speaker units. Stay tuned, by the way. Newsletter again. There'll be some news on our site in a month or two on that. I won't spoil the surprise entirely, but it'll be about distress calls. Um, they're a really interesting tool because what you often see is when you first introduce a distress cry generator. I think you've probably seen them before,
Oh yeah.
Jesse.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Again, on the deterrent spectrum, a little less dramatic than a banger. It kind of goes into your passive audio assisting category as opposed to your kind of workhorse items. What you can see happen with them is, especially with social birds, when you first set out a distress cry, you'll see this a lot with corvids. They'll go and check it out. They want to see what's going on. Is one of my buddies getting nailed by a hawk, right? And so they'll go and see what's going on. And what freaks them out is they don't see anything. So what's causing them danger? Is there a predator still around that's hunting?
Yep.
Now, if you really get your timing right and use it strategically, that's the time to play a little bit of game. So you introduce a distress call, you stay a little in the background, get them kind of interested in swarming that generator, and then go all out on pyrotechnics on them.
Yep.
Really go to town. This works great again for smart social birds. Again, crows. One of the reasons this is a tried and true method with crows. Call them in, get them agitated with some distress calls, and then just go all out, full aggression with them, and boom, you're probably going to see pretty dramatic results. And then really you go down to that maintenance level, and when you see a scout bird, beyond that scout bird, interestingly enough, I don't think gulls in general are given enough credit for their intelligence. And I mean, they use scout birds too a lot of times.
Yep.
So again, cool use of distress calls used strategically can be really really useful. That's kind of my last kind of deterrent tool on the hit list, I would say.
Yeah. Actually, I had that on the list here, and I totally skipped over it like 3 times. But
The
so we mentioned
child of a stepchild of deterrence.
right, because it's one that I've used. It's one I don't use as often anymore. But no, it's definitely it when it's effective, it's very effective.
Now, again,
Um,
keep in mind, because an airport environment is different than an agricultural setting, where we're in an agricultural setting, all you want to do is keep your problem species away.
yep.
You don't want to be attracting other things. So, foxes would be a little interested in distress calls. I've actually used distress calls basically to get free falconry service from wild falcons. Again, in an agricultural setting, I've a little bit of falconry call and a falcon kite, and I've seen falcons, again, anecdotally, come and hang out in that area a little more often than I would expect them to.
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking like a lot of the calls you hear, a lot of them are programmed like American kestrels. And you'll start because you'll see kestrels kind of more chummy with each other more so than you will the other falcons like your peregrines and gyrs and
Yeah.
merlins and etc. So you've mentioned the website a couple of times. What is your website address? Probably should put that out there for the viewers.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's margosupplies.com, MARGOSUPPLIES.com. You can see all our products there. Again, we've got a little newsletter subscription there. We promise we won't hound your inbox, but when we got something cool to announce, you'll be the first to know about it. Other than that, of course, you can always reach us by phone. Just give us a call at Oh, this is going to be the test for the memory banks. 1-888-652-1199.
Can you say that one more time? I think the 800 or something chipped out.
Yeah, it's 1-888-652-1199.
1199. Okay, and then you guys, because obviously, you're in Canada right now, but you do have a warehouse here in Prescott Valley, Arizona. You said that's a new warehouse?
Yeah, that's right. So people familiar with the company, we've been active both in Canada and the US for basically our whole existence. Myself, I'm kind of reflective of the company. I'm half Canadian, half American. Well, technically all American, half Canadian, half United States of America. I'm currently in Canada right now, but yeah, we've got an warehouse. It's just up the road from you, a little bit higher in the hills in Prescott Valley. Shipping out of there every day. We've been out of there now about just over a year. It's working really well, and people are getting our products real fast. So even with coronavirus, we're shipping fast. Like I said, give us a call. If you give us a call by 1 o'clock, we might be able to get it out that day before the truck shows up, but definitely the day after.
Right, and just for reference, that's 1 o'clock Arizona time. So anybody's hearing that in New York. Right. Depending on if it's winter or summer, I probably shouldn't dive into all that stuff. But it's either 3 hours behind or 2 hours behind.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever been to Page, Arizona?
Not yet, not the Page.
I went there once, and because it's right at the Three Corners, I guess, area.
The Four Corners, yep.
Four Corners, right? Even worse. I woke up at I thought 7 o'clock to go on this tour of a canyon, which was at 8. And then I went and got breakfast, and it was 10 a.m. somehow there. And then I drove another 5 minutes back to the tour group, and they told me I was still an hour early. I don't know, but you got to do the daylight savings time. So, the non-daylight savings time. And
yeah, we're non here. Yeah, we don't do it at all. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like if you're driving to Arizona this time of year, so coming from the East Coast, the route that I've always taken is you change time when you cross from Indiana in Illinois. Then you change it again when you cross into New Mexico, and then when you leave New Mexico, you change it again. So that's the southernmost part of mountain time is New Mexico. That's until winter time, and then Arizona is part of it. But right now we're part of Pacific. It gets funky.
It does. Yeah. Summer's Pacific time, winter's mountain time. But in any case, I work on mountain time. So anyway, all good though. Our hours are 8 a.m. to 4:30 mountain time for answering the phones.
8 to 4:30. Okay. So if you don't have anything extra, Jared, I think I'm about good. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for hosting me, Jesse. Really appreciate it. Good to speak to you. And looking forward to more podcasts as well.
Oh yeah, we'll get some more in down the line. We'll get some more going, and then if you guys get some new products, I'd love to do some episodes on that. Maybe highlighting some new stuff you got coming out, but actually, being able to talk about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't bring any props. I thought we were doing all audio for this one. So I've got my coronavirus haircut right now. But yeah, I would have had props ready, but no worries there. That's we'll just have to do a follow-up.
Just gotta do another one. Yeah. So again, if anybody was interested in this and what Margo has for sale, definitely go to margosupplies.com. They got a really easy to navigate, really cool website. I still get a kick out of all the bear stuff. That's not something that I've run across a lot in this line. So that's definitely cool just to see what those products are. Just seeing what's on the market is a treat into itself. But all right, Jared, that's all I got for you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for hosting again, Jesse.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yep. Bye now.
Bye.
There you have it, folks. That's today's episode. Well, let's say thank you again to Jared at Margo Supplies. Again, we're going to have a link for Margo Supplies down below. Go give them a check out and see if they got anything that you might be interested in. Yeah, that's all I got for you today. Make sure you hit that like, share, or subscribe button, depending on your platform. And again, thank you for sticking around, and we'll catch you next time.